But if you're just looking for a ceremony that has to do with healing and your own personal healing and an exploration into spirit and something greater than that, I think you really need to do your homework to see that that's what most people are getting out of those kinds of experiences.
How am I supposed to, at the beginning, know that I'm entering into a safe space, that where I'm avoiding the situation where you did, where essentially those guys tried to kill you? And how do I know whether or not I'm embroiled in bad medicine, by entering in with a certain person?
I think it's really hard ultimately to know that. And so I've always recommended that somebody do as much research as absolutely possible about the people that they would participate in ceremony with. And these kind of fly-by-night ceremonies that happen and just pass through and come around may or may not be the best choice for you. In my case, it was a situation where the first people that I met were really people that were quite harmful. And then I ended up in the hands of people that were incredibly loving and supportive, but also incredibly tough, because they simply said, if you're going to survive this world with us, you have to be that tough. You have to learn what is the way of the jungle and how to survive it. And then, so there, I don't hold any grudges in the sense of, how difficult training really was. But if you're just looking for a ceremony that has to do with healing and your own personal healing and an exploration into spirit and something greater than that, I think you really need to do your homework to see that that's what most people are getting out of those kinds of experiences. And if somebody has a long track record of being able to provide that for a vast majority of the people that have been in the presence of that shaman, then you can kind of hear through the noise, and the squabble of this person, that person, and the finger pointing and all the different things that people like to do kind of in any sort of gossip community, and really get to the heart of the matter of whether or not you resonate with that person. So I think you take just as an example, 1,000 people and they go work with a shaman. There's no way that all 1,000 people are going to like that shaman, vibe with that shaman. It's no different than any other kind of doctor. They could say it doesn't have a good bedside manner, don't like his personality, et cetera, whatever. The person can be wildly in a different psychological and psychiatric state than you are. You have to understand that the comments from a lot of people that seek shamans come from a place of being in extreme pain and suffering. And then they have, on some place like online, an equal voice to anybody else without knowing their backstory. They could be compulsive liars.
Right.
They could be coming from literally any scenario of the psychologically infirmed. They could be sociopathic and psychopathic in their own right. So you kind of have to hear through that noise, right? So say that represents 5%, 10% of the squabble, and you see that 80, 90% of the people are coming away saying that they really got something powerful from that experience in the presence of that shaman. You can know pretty much that the shaman's doing a really good job of being able to hold space for the majority of everybody there. And then you need to see whether or not you vibe with that person's message and that person's energy and the way that that person works. And then I think that's the other thing that causes the squabble as well, is that there's really like no shamanism 101 where everyone all agrees on how it's supposed to be practiced. And there's all these different kinds of practitioners out there. And Western involvement has only spread that concept of different kinds of practitioners. And so then not only is it like who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, it's also if they like this person's technique or this other person's nature of practice and stuff. I mean, as a really good example of that, we have a YouTube video that was a documentary done on the work that we did as a center for over, it was shot over a number of months, about 6 to 10 months. And the majority of the film focuses on the most intense experiences that people had that literally came suffering from different kinds of possession and different kinds of extreme mental illness. It got all put together into an hour and a half long documentary. And then people see that and think that's what's happening at our center. Right. And fundamentally, that was less than 0.1% of everybody that's ever been through our center. Most people come and have an unbelievably relaxed and deep journey type kind of experience. Yes, it can get scary. Yes, it can get hard, but it is not as, enthrallingly intense and freaky as some of those images that you can see in that film. And that's really because that was where somebody consolidated a a bunch of footage. I mean, like literally hundreds of hours of footage into the situations that would be most compelling to see in a, in a film.
Yeah.
And the real reality is that thousands of people have experienced unbelievably calm experiences with us going super deep into the medicine space without having that kind of turmoil. But then if you talk individually with the people that had that turmoil, they have very good reason why they had that turmoil and what they were going through and why they were releasing those kinds of energies in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think you have to really kind of cut through the chaff and really get to the heart of what's really being said about somebody. And I think you can also look at how they treat the kinds of criticism that they've received. So if you find somebody that treats criticism with a real amount of openness and heart about it, and doesn't really engage in the squabble, just kind of lets it happen, I think it's also really telling of that person's spirit. And that's what you're really interested in and when you're looking for a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think one medicine circle is particularly better than another one. I think it's a question of whether it's going to be more effective for you. And so that's where it becomes a very personal, decision that you need to go deep within yourself to see, okay, is this person getting enough good reviews to, pass that test? And do I really resonate with what the other people who are coming out of this person's experience are saying happened and how I see them transformed?
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are really big keys. And the other thing I always said is look into their eyes as well. They say that eyes are sort of the window into the soul. And so look into the person's eyes and see if they're clear and if they look honest and if they'll look you in the eye and really tell you what's going on. And then on top of that, I've always said, ask questions. And if they're unwilling to answer the questions, then to me, that's suspicious of something. And I always want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always played this as a complete open book about what was going on. There was no need for secrecy. The plant medicine space was so intense that secrecy wasn't needed to make it more intense. On the contrary, it was so unbelievably intense, it needed to be broken down into bite-sized pieces that people could actually absorb and deal with because of how mind-altering and expansive over such a short period of time that experience could be for somebody. So even the person who thought they were most prepared could come to a ceremony and the next day just say, I had no idea. I was not prepared at all for that, right? Yeah. So, I remember that from my first experience. Within 17 minutes, I realized that I had gotten myself into a deep situation that I was going to be lucky to survive. And I really do feel lucky that I survived it. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And that wasn't even a situation where I was being harmed. That was actually just an unbelievably deep healing that I didn't know somebody could actually even have in terms of a conscious experience. It was so intense and it was just so throttling. And it was so fast in terms of the visions. I mean, like I describe it as 50, 100 strobe lights at the same time going off, each vision having to be dealt with in this like multi-dimensional soup of spirit and intradimensional geometry that you're kind of suspended in as consciousness, no longer embodied, and having to fend for yourself in that for the first time ever was completely different to university education or high school, like just such a different form of learning that, I didn't think that this needed to be mystified. I think it needed to be demystified and studied because it was something that was so amazingly transformative, but also so impactful in such a small amount of time.